Hey everybody, BTO Pro here. Today I'm going to talk to you about 0.3.1 of WCFactory. So WCF is now the command we use for this. I'm going to show you end-to-end what we're doing with it, what the current state of it is. It's getting pretty good. 0.3.1 switches everything over to Yarn for install. So imagine I already installed it. So then I can do WCF help, get the commands, so we have a full-fledged CLI, thanks to Michael Potter, and you can see we have commands build, element, factory, help, and start. So start is the first command you're going to run to get things off and running. So our mental models, we have like a company, and a company has factories, and those factories manage and create elements is kind of the mental model here. And then at the end, you're going to build those elements, and you're going to build them for production, kind of a thing. So I've already run that command, so I'm going to go to where I have those sitting in a directory called company. And what company is going to look like, open that up, is you'll see builds, factories, storybooks, and templates. And so it'll also ask you some initial questions, which it writes to this little user file here. So I've already run WCFactory. Effectively what factory is doing is it's going to give you a monorepo so that you can manage your element library. It's going to give you all the tooling set up in place. It's going to give you the ability to reference 6 different libraries for building custom elements. It's going to be able to standardize your tooling for working with each of those individually, as well as building and publishing the whole darn thing. So I already ran those 2 commands. Then the important thing, you want to say, how do I build some elements? So you do WCF element. WCF element is going to ask you, hey, which type of element do you want to make? So we've got support for vanilla, lit element, polymer, Red Hat, which is a lightweight wrapper on top of vanilla, Skate.js with lit HTML in it, Slim, and Twig at the moment. And we're open to adding more. It's pretty easy, honestly. The way this is working is when you hit start, it's going to kick out this templates directory. And you'll see under libraries. So these are the templated, tokenized with EJS files to work on those. So if you want to add another one and PR it or update your own, then feel free to. The other notion with this is that this templates directory is like, these are your templates for how you want to manage the way you produce things. So if you don't like the fact that we have all these definitions, you only ever use vanilla, you could just delete them. If you don't like the way we kick out a polymer element, you could go in and manipulate it. So same with builds. Build targets, currently we support static, Drupal 7 and 8, Backdrop CMS and Graph CMS with boilerplates, as far as this will give you a boilerplate theme that you'll work with your element repo. Anyway, so let's build a Skate.js element. So the name is going to be car window, we'll say. And description, describe how a car window works. Okay, I don't want to use Sass in this, but you could. Do you want to add custom properties? I'll say yes. Do you want to automatically support hacks, which is, you can go to hackstheweb.org and check out our authoring system we're building, completely decoupled of anything, and it's in web components. So you can set up to automatically have data binding with that. I'm going to say no for the purposes of this. And do you want to add a new property? Sure. Okay. So a car window, we'll say, has a tint, and that tint is a string, and its default is clear. And I don't want to make this available for CSS styling, and I don't want to notice changes on it. Now these 2 settings currently make the most sense in Polymer. We will bake in support so that they can kind of work in the other ones. At the moment, those 2 don't do anything outside of Polymer. So I'll add another one to the window, size, and we'll say that size is a number, and we'll just say that it's 100 for whatever reason. No. Okay. And then property, sure, manufacturer. Okay, and we'll say that manufacturer is a Boolean, sure, as to whether or not it comes from a major manufacturer. All right, so I'm done adding properties. When I'm done adding properties, we'll see it's going to go create a bunch of stuff. It's asking me to confirm the latest versions of Iron List. Okay, so it may ask, it's installing via Yarn Flat, which is kind of required for working on web components in this way. So you might get some questions. It should be minimal because there's very few dependencies here. But so while that's running, if I go into factories, my factory name, and then elements, I should see car window. There we go. And so the elements that it's stamping out are completely autonomous. This could be published as a standalone element, and it could work off of any repo, or someone could pull it down and they could work on it by itself. In fact, if you go to NPM or Yarn, you can actually see elements that we are publishing in this manner. So we've got 3 up at the moment. You can see they get cranked out. Lerna and Yarn workspaces help manage the version numbers, and so you can see this nice little even README has been automated as far as telling other people how to go about getting this, testing it, working with it. So, okay, the other thing it kicks out is, hey, to work on your new element, copy and paste this. Cool. Copy, paste it in there. Okie doke. And then when I paste that in there, all it's doing is it's CDing into the directory, and then it's running start, yarn start rather. So I'll get an automatic documentation site, a little mini one. And the way it's doing that is it's taking the files that you find in SRC, and it's running gulp, and it's compiling these into one file, this car-window.js, which you can see here. So it compiles those files together in order to work. So then I have this one file here, which is what these are pointing to. It's uncompiled, but it's pulling together those SRC files. Then it's running Polymer CLI, which you don't need to use Polymer in order to use its tooling for purposes of web component development. And in there's an analyze command. So it's actually running an analysis on your element, and it's going to be able to generate this documentation site off of that analysis. So this is the way that you're able to work on one little element in the universe. So I can see the classes that are in here. I can see there's an element car-window. I can see it has a manufacturer, size, and a tint, and I can see what those default values are. And I can hit demo, and then I get just this little demo site. So these are some of the affordances if you're not familiar with Polymer and the tooling surrounding it. Like all of this stuff that I'm showing in these element libraries, these are from Polymer, but they're ultra generic. So you can actually, in this case, I have a skate.js element, and it's just going to help me be able to document this skate.js element. I'm not using Polymer when this element goes out into the wild. This is just purely for tooling offline and building it up. So the way I would work with this is then I'd go into my SRC directory, and I'd open up the JS file. We can see that we pull in the lit HTML renderer for skate.js. We can see we extend this made-up skate.js class we made just so that our tooling works a little better. For our tooling to work, you do need this line that says required for tooling, do not touch. And I'll show you what that does in a second. And so from there, this is all the JavaScript, right? It's kicked out with some half-decent boilerplate just to pre-populate some values. Takes the props that are found in this standalone properties file. It's another nice thing. You can work on these independently, and it will compile it so you can use them after the fact. So if I wanted to do, let's say the name of this is size, the value is 1,000 as a default, and I hit save, and we open up terminal. You can see it did another analysis. There it goes, because gulp's just sitting there running in the background. Now if I refresh this documentation site, see it kicks out with 1,000 because that's the default value. So where that's coming from is while it's setting up the tooling, it also makes a CSS and an HTML file. And it's taken those properties that we put in initially, and this is just to get you started, but it's written property binding in that library for each of those properties, and it's stamped it into the initial HTML, just so you have something to play with. So in this regard, from here I could take this, make a div, and we'll wrap these in a div, and we'll say that tint is a class All right, and then we'll take it off of there, and we'll have a slot in there, but then the slot is going to come after the size of manufacturer, you know, just so that we have some variability here. And so manufacturer will be like manufacturer, which is a Boolean. Oh yeah, it's a Boolean. So I guess we should only show size if there is a manufacturer. That's decent. Okay, so hidden equals, in this case, what manufacturer kicks out as. So let's get rid of that. And then at the top of this, for no reason, we'll just put like an H2 that says new car window. Okay, so while updating all of that, the tooling is going to rebuild in the background. And now I have a new car window here. Cool. So the way to work with the demo and influence that little demo site is I can go to demo here, open index.html. And so here I could have you know, some different examples of what it looks like when you manipulate this. So if I go into my properties, I have size, tint, and manufacturer. So let's do manufacturer. Oops. And we'll do manufacturer, and that's a Boolean. And then under size, we'll do size equals 50 and tint equals green. Sure. Now, what maybe what I want to do is I go into the CSS of this element, and I'd say, all right, so let's do dot tint hyphen green and background color green and dot tint hyphen clear, because that was what the default value I gave it was. We'll do background color white, and then we'll do like an opacity of 0.7, or maybe not white, make it gray so you can even tell that it did something. Okay, now I need to go into car window here. We'll do class, so we do tint hyphen, and now okay, I can go into my little demo and maybe I add another one to illustrate the difference between these. So paste that down there. Maybe this top one doesn't have these things, right? And this other one does. So I should get the defaults. This is the default case. And whoops, let's actually wrap that in like a paragraph tag, just because that tag should show up there. And paste it in here with a few things added. Okay, save. Again, that's been noticing in the background, recompiling. So refresh, and now I have my two cases here. You'll see if I inspect the document here, pull this window over so you can see what's in there. This is the beauty of a web component here. So I've got my car window, and in its shadow root, it's referencing, you know, it just places that paragraph tag in there. But then if I dig into that shadow root, we can see there's that CSS styling in it with the clear tint, and there's car window, there's tint hyphen clear. It's been told to hide this value because there's the Boolean for it. If I take hidden off of here, you can see, you know, 1000 shows up. So manufacturer I don't have working appropriately here. And so I'm not that well versed in Skate, to be perfectly honest. But you get the idea. So that has allowed me to kind of do the whole build. I'm working on this silly little element, in this case a car window. I'm working on the HTML, I'm styling it via CSS, I'm cleaning up the demo use cases for how someone might use this. If I'm adding properties, I'm putting it in an abstract file. And then what's happening is whenever I hit save, it's analyzing and it's merging all of those files together. And then it's putting it right here. And so what you get when it merges them together is you see that comment is taken out, and in its place it's putting the correct render function, so this HTML render function with all of our HTML here and the JavaScript and the CSS. And then for properties, it's defining the properties here as a properties object, which is then how down here in our constructor we step through the properties, or props in this case for Skate.js data binding, And we are then mapping from this kind of generic properties object that can work across projects specifically to skate in this case. And then we define our custom element and everybody's happy. So that's kind of the process of taking and working on a new element. Okay, so then what I would do is I would hit exit out of that. And then I would do yarn run build. And yarn run build, we can look in the directory here, is going to take that file. It's going to run Polymer CLI's build routine. So it's going to generate ES5 AMD and ES6 capable variants of it. And then it's going to leave in the top level directory here, it's going to leave a car-window.amd.js. So this works with the AMD module system. It's going to live a car-window.es6.js. This is what you would put into the front end. It's been compressed and uglified, all that fun stuff. So this is what you'd actually reference when it goes out into production. Then you have the raw file still sitting here in case anyone would need to compile it into a different routine. You've got a UMD as well, so for universal module definition. So it is going to automatically compile to those three forms while leaving the derivatives hanging around. We think this maximizes reuse and ability to integrate into other workflows. So then what I would do is, I don't have car window published to our NPM registry. I'm not really sure I want to publish car window to our NPM registry, to be perfectly honest. But I suppose I could just for the purposes of this. So then what I would do to make sure we're in keeping with build routine is I would do yarn run publish. Oh, learn a publish. Sorry. And so learn a publish. There we go. Nope, working tree has changes to commit. So it's going to complain that you need to commit these changes. So I'm going to do git add a, git commit m, a new version of awesome explosion, because that's what I originally did when we did this silly thing a while ago. You might also notice it ran Husky, which is going to do some pre-linting checks to ensure that you don't have any script errors. It's also going to clean up your output so that it's nicely formatted. And get status that may, yeah, sometimes you end up having to do that twice and totally figured out why. Added new package. Okay. There we go. Okay, so git push origin master, which is now going to go up to our connected LRN web components repo, which I'll show you here. So this is our mono repo for LRN web components, the way we manage this. And you see a refresh, and now my that silly element is up there, the car window one. That's fine. And so now I can do learn publish. And learn is gonna, you have to have logged into NPM via the command line. It would ask you to do that before. So then you pick a version, right? We're on 0020 for this, and I'm gonna go to 0021. And it says, hey, these ones are private. And so you can see that I have these few element definitions here that are private elements. Are you sure you want to publish these? Yeah, sure. So just as a note on publishing, we are in the process of converting our element library over to this monorepo approach using this tooling. We have 200 elements at the moment, so we have to be really stringent on how accurately the monorepo works before we go and implement the automated upgrade routines that we've been working on. So, okay, so we have this up there. So what that does is, if you're not familiar with Lerna, it's going to cut a version tag into GitHub, and then it's going to go, over into NPM, and it's going to have a similar version, a matching version with that. So now my LRN button is updated, but because I had other packages in there, if I start to type LRN web components, there should be other elements in here. Let's do hacks body behaviors. See what's dependent on it. Beaker broker. Okay, that wasn't published before. So there's the beaker broker element that I started work on. So you can see there's the documentation of the Yahoo car window. Hey, there's car window. So there's our silly car window element, which I'm sure I'll remove or clean up in the future. Okay, so now we've got it published up there. Other people can run this command. They can take that web component. That's awesome. That's part of what we wanted from this. So then the last step is, okay, so we've got this portfolio. Now we have a project coming on and we want to actually use these elements for that project. How do I do that? So, good question. Let's do WCF build. WCF build is going to say, hey, what factory do you want to use? I'm going to say LRN web components. You can have other, multiple ones. So if you ever get asked what factory to use, that's why, because the company can support multiple factories in our little mental model in case you had multiple design repos or monorepos that you were publishing to for different clients or whatever. So now I'm going to do any of these. These are the target that I'm writing to. I'm just going to do static. And so just an example build. Okay. Oh boy. Oh boy. That's going to make the name just an example build. Okay, so that may have gotten a little angry because of the making its giant repo. Let's try that again. WCF build. So do LRM web components, static folder name, oops, things and stuff. This happens when you try to get creative. All right, so you see it said, hey, let's make sure these versions are correct. And go, yep, let's make sure they're all 3.0.1. Cool. So now, let's look at what these files are. This is going to, you may have seen the build routine before and you say, okay, well, what's the difference there? So the build routine from before is building the individual car window. So that is making it so it has all these derivatives of this. If you had a build routine that for whatever reason, needed to just hit a .amd or a .umd, then you could do that, no additional compiling. But what our build does when you call build, let's get rid of that example that didn't work. So there we go, oops. Okay, so in the oops directory, we're going to get an index.html. Let's see what that looks like. So, and this again, this is still part of the same structure. But so we've got our it goes company/builds, and then in this case /oops, because that's the one I named it. And then you'll see an index.html. So this is a boilerplate file that's going to, it's got all the Babel definitions in here, and it's going to make the evaluation based on if the browser has knowledge of modules. So if it has knowledge of modules, then it's going to define one of those modules, which the word define is up here in the Babel defs, and then your app is going to load up. And so this is going to pick basically whether or not you need to support IE 11, or there's some weird versions of iOS on iPhone that didn't have support for modules but did support ES6, for example. But anyway, the ES5 AMD method will work as broadly as possible. However, we should be trying to use ES6 because it should be faster. So it'll use ES6 whenever it can, and other browsers it'll use ES5 as a fallback. So let's look in here as to what this did. So it created a build. You see there's build.js it's looking for under web components. So if we go to ES6 and then build.js, you'll see it's taken a bunch of import definitions. So this created a package.json dynamically. And the only thing that it's required to have is the web components JS project, because that's the way that it goes and finds everything. It brings in the polyfills. But what it then did is it automatically generated this new file based on what it knows is published publicly out to NPM. And then it just ran yarn install after it made this. So you effectively are getting fresh copies of these projects, which may seem a little weird, but that's kind of the way you would do it. Also, this is supposed to be a boilerplate, like the thing you use to jump off to. And so if you knew, that you actually needed as you know, in this app you're working on, like polymer / iron Ajax, and you hadn't used that or defined it previously, right? This is a legit package JSON file that you can just put whatever you want in, mix your elements in with other people's. So take that out and see it's, you know, this wonderful pure little package JSON here. Okay, so then it's got ES5 AMD, and if I look at the build.js, this is the defined definitions that'll net us the same thing. And so then from here, you'd kind of, you know, build your app or reference your app in some way. You can see the raw file as to what it did. So it generates this little build.js that just references everything. And that way the tooling can kick in as far as Polymer is concerned, because it runs the Polymer CLI's build routine, and it just points it at this file basically and says, hey, here's your definitions. So it then spiders through, finds all the web components that it needs, and then that's the only thing that you would have in your output. So to illustrate that this actually does work, what we can do is we can go in here, we can do in between the body tags, what was that, car window tag. All right, let's get rid of the cruft around it. And then we'll also put, I have a LRN button tag, is a legit one that I've been converting. So there's our LRN button tag. So I'll just put these these tags on the interface. And then I'm gonna do surge dot, project is right here. Unable to publish, application too large. Oh no. I've got way too many files in here. Let's to throw this up to surge. It's probably because I build. Let's get rid of build and node and dist. Again, I'm just doing this to try and make it show up to be silly. Oh, it's too large still. Well, we'll just do a local Polymer serve then off of it. And so we do that, you see it opens up, and there are our web components. Now, hit refresh on this, you see it should load in pretty fast here. Might be a little bit of a flash of unstyled content or something like that. But let's take this and illustrate that this works across browsing targets, at least as best as we can here. So this is Safari. Open that same link up in Safari. There we go. All right. There it is in Safari, looking the exact same way. Let's open it up in Firefox. All right, I got to open Firefox. It's been a while since I opened Firefox. And we'll move it over here. So this is Firefox, and you'll see that it's not currently running because it's mad about Beaker browser not being in there. It's trying to resolve the dependencies because I tried to delete them before. So let's just put those back. So we're not doing the publish, and there we go. Got less angry about that. So this is Firefox, I should say. This is not nightly. This is the current version that's publicized, which in a few days. So basically this uses the polyfill. In a few days, on October 23rd, this won't be an issue anymore. So let's see what it looks like in nightly. I'm going to open up nightly here in another window. There we go. Okay. Hey, there we go. I didn't have to do any of that other stuff. So works in nightly, works in current Firefox. You may have noticed it's a little bit faster on this, on getting there. Hey, and it actually loaded the full thing. We're still messing with some of our elements. That's an issue in my actual element doing the colorization, not in the tooling. So so that's kind of the end-to-end of what this is attempting to provide. There's also support for Storybook, but it still needs some work. But I can show you that real quick. So if I go to Factories, LRN, and then I do yarn start, it will fire up Storybook. There's an issue at the moment as far as resolving multiple copies of Polymer, and since we use Polymer in a bunch of different elements, that's where the state of this is. But the idea is also with the factory is that we would have our entire element portfolio here cataloged, and you can see, there's the glitch as it's expressing. But I should be able to delete some things to make it show up. So if I go to elements, let's get rid of car window. I also think I might need to get rid of that beaker one, but let's see. Just kind of want this to show up for the purposes of the demo here. Let's get rid of those. Hey, there we go. Okay. So then the idea would be I have my element portfolio that as I do the process I showed before, this would build out. And then another thing we've been trying to automate that I didn't mention as part of this is that this also kicks out a lrn-button.story.js. And that story.js file is going to loop over the class of your element's properties, and it's going to attempt to automatically build these knobs to match the properties. So that's part of why we have that in a separate file, is so that it can be better quantified. And so then if I did like raised, see, it can actually just build it in real time. I think save is in, there we go, save. So that I could rapid prototype this. Ooh, blue text. Hey, there we go. As well as have it publicized to a site. So then I could run yarn run, I think it's storybook, or build storybook, I think it is. Build, there we go, build hyphen storybook. And then that will take what it finds in there and build a storybook and then throw it in this storybooks directory right here. So it'll update this so you'll have a static copy that you could throw up on a website, share around to other members of the team without them needing all the tooling or whatever. There we go. So that's kind of the current state of WCFactory. There's still some things to clean up for sure, but that's kind of what we're envisioning with the entire end-to-end tool chain with this. So if you want to get involved, I'm at BTO Pro on Twitter. We hang out in the Gitter channel associated with the project. There we go, let's chat on Gitter or jump in on the issue queues. Thanks for watching.